Hi, thanks for tuning in to TV2's Front Porch Conversations here at the Advent Christian Village. Today I'm on the porch with two lovely people, Jim and Rosemary Humbles. Thank you so much for joining us today, and during the next time, our time here together, we're going to tell our viewers a lot about you, or you're going to tell yourself a lot about you.
We'll find out.
Well, this is not a new location for the two of you. Tell us when you first came to the village, Jim.
We came in 1972. I was offered a position here as director of the children's program. At that time, we had a significantly good-sized children's program, children that had to live here because they were unable to live with their families. I had about 30 children at the time. And so that's what attracted me here, actually, and worked with them for about 4 years before moving on to some other responsibilities.
So you've seen a lot of changes and been responsible for a lot of growth during your time here.
I've seen a lot of changes, yes.
Well, why don't we start with Rosemary? Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, which is 18 miles south of Erie, on Lake Erie, in a small town, but it was a university town, so I was exposed to a lot of good cultural things with that, and graduated high school there. Went to Berkshire Christian College where I met Jim.
And Jim, what about you?
Born and spent my early years in a farm near Greenville, North Carolina. And then from Greenville, as a young child, we moved to Wilmington, North Carolina. And Wilmington is my hometown. Yeah.
And did you finish school, high school in Wilmington?
I finished high school in Wilmington, yes.
And then you went to? Then
I went to Berkshire Christian College in Massachusetts. A number of people here at the village attended Berkshire. That's where Rosemary and I met, as she said. And we were married shortly after I finished my work there.
Rosemary, what are some of your favorite childhood memories?
Ooh, I took piano lessons for 12 years. I remember my mom taking me to Erie, which was 18 miles from Edinburgh, to my piano lesson. I was very involved in the choral program at our high school. We had really good music programs in the school. Went to district and state courses, and just a lot of family. Our whole family was involved with music. My mother was the church organist at a small Advent Christian church in Edinburgh, and the choir director. And our family traveled around and did music programs for little churches in the area. Mm-hmm. And so I guess my mom emphasized, to whom much is given, much is required. So even though as a teenager I probably wasn't as fond of traveling like that, I gladly did it for the family. The chance to use my gifts, I guess.
And do you have siblings?
I have a brother. He's 6 years older. He died about 5 years ago. He was a physician in outside of Philadelphia in Reading, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm.
Jim, what are some of your favorite childhood memories?
Well, I think most during my high school years, I was quite active in the youth fellowship of our church, and we lived near the Sound, and so I spent a lot of time in boating and water skiing and fishing, and enjoyed that. High school years were good years. I loved Wilmington. It was a great city because you were so near the ocean.
Right. It's a beautiful
Sound, city. So there was a lot of recreation, a lot of things to do. Enjoyed it very much.
Rosemary, when you went to Berkshire, what were you thinking was your major or your calling? Or was it too early to know?
I just was talked into going, and I don't think I had real goals then. Probably something to do in education, because when we transferred to Aurora, I went in. I didn't have really anything to do with music. I went into education and English, so I taught English in Aurora in the middle school. I had an uncle who was a principal in Pennsylvania in a high school, And he said there aren't a lot of jobs in music for women, and it might be wise to have a different vocation and use music as an avocation. So I switched to education and English and graduated and taught 8 years in Aurora.
And Jim, what about you? What were your thoughts and dreams when you went to college?
Well, I felt a call to ministry, not knowing specifically what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
And so I attended Berkshire for 4 years, received a degree in theology and Bible studies, but really didn't feel a call to pastoral or missions. Found out later, of course, that I had some gift in administration and management. And thankfully, there were some opportunities that opened up for me to do just that. Yeah.
So did you meet in class or on campus, or do you remember the first time you saw each other?
She remembers these kinds of things better than I do. But the campus was quite a small campus. Everyone knew everyone. And so I was a year ahead of her, so we probably were not in any classes together at that time. So it must have been some social event.
What about you? Is that what you would say, Rosemary?
Well, yes. For some reason, I was attracted to him, and he really was dating someone else. And but look, hindsight, you think probably the Lord had something to do with that for us to be together. And I think we both felt a call to some kind of ministry that you can use your gifts in places other than just being a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have to say, thankfully, it was Jim who had us go to Aurora because it was very important for him that I graduate and be able to support myself if something happened to him. And I'll always be grateful for that. And that's something that he also stressed with his daughters, that they have an education in case their husbands or whatever were not able to provide for them. So.
And so after Aurora, you got married.
After Berkshire.
Berkshire. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you were married when you got to Aurora.
Right.
And where was your wedding?
Outside of Edinburgh, in a little Methodist church, because our church in Edinburgh was very small and it didn't have a center aisle. And brides like to come down the center aisle. So, yes, and friends from Berkshire days and high school were in the wedding. And so...
Anybody we know here that was in the wedding?
Anybody that we know here?
Was in the wedding?
I don't think so. No.
Probably not.
Because we found that in a couple of other interviews.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And was there a funny story the day of your wedding?
Yes.
She can tell it.
Jim was pretty nervous, and my mom had some anxiety tablets. I think they were called Valium in that day. And she insisted he take one so he could chill out a little bit. So, but that's why he doesn't remember anything.
Did he stay awake during the vows?
Yes, he did.
All right. Well, this is good.
He did.
And then from your time at Aurora, where were you next?
Well, we stayed there quite a while. I went to work for the college. I was the assistant dean of students for a number of years. And on one occasion, Pomeroy Carter was there, and I really didn't know him other than knowing him by reputation, and we had visited some, but he came to me and said, if you ever decide to leave Aurora College, give me a call. So I gave him a call, and that's how we got the ball rolling for me to come down here, for us to come down here.
And had either of you been to Advent Christian Village before?
Yes, I had come down. I had actually chaperoned a busload of students from Aurora to come down and spend a week working. And that was my first real knowledge of the village at that point. And it's hard to call it a village back in the 60s and early 70s, but
It was called the home at that
it
point.
was
Is that
called
right?
the home at that time, yeah.
What about you, Rosemary?
I traveled with a girls' quartet with Dr. Pottle, who was on the staff at Berkshire and knew of our girls' quartet. And then I accompanied the trio. And the four of us traveled in a station wagon with Dr. and Mrs. Pottle all around the United States that summer. And one of our stops was here at the home, as it was called. And so I visited a lot of places. He was very adamant that we see every national park and important places along the way. And he would get really irritated with us a little because we were all writing letters to our boyfriends and we weren't watching out the windows and seeing all this stuff. And the other thing is he loved A&W root beer. So we had to stop every time we went through a town and there was an A&W root beer, we had to stop, even if it was like from Live Oak to Lake City. And there was an A&W root beer stand in Live Oak when we first moved here. So that was how I became acquainted. And of course, that was the only time I had been here. And as you can imagine, it was a little different back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I always admired Jerry Carter for she came even further back than when we came, and it was even more remote. And we had one telephone in the middle of the campus that we could all use.
I have heard that. I'm thinking, wow.
Yeah.
Well, but there weren't a lot of places to call either, were there?
No, not really.
Not close by. So you accepted the call to come.
Yes.
And Rosemary, what did you think when you got here? Where did y'all live?
Oh, my goodness. Well, everybody said, Rosemary won't make it down there. Rosemary will hate it down there. And because of our exposure to things in 40 miles from Chicago, they thought that I wouldn't be happy. In those days, you went where your husband went, you know, as a couple in ministry. And really, it's easy to fall in love with this place because there is something different about it that we recognized right away. And Carrie, our daughter, was 11 months old. So I was a stay-at-home mom when we first moved here.
And then you have another daughter?
We have another daughter. Jennifer was born 5 years afterwards. And so they grew up here in a time when staff and residents did everything together. It was a great place to raise your children because you weren't separated from them when Dad had to go to work, because Dad's work would often take all of us to, you know, to a function. So it was a good place. Well, the day we arrived, the man who plays the organ at the church was unable to be there. So that was Saturday. We arrived on a Saturday and asked if I'd play the organ on Sunday for church. And I'm not really I'm not an organist, but I was willing to give it a try since they needed someone. What you did, you stepped up.
Jim, tell us again, you were with the children's program for a few years after you arrived. What was your next position here at the village?
Well, I was asked if I would move into working with the senior population and mainly the nursing home. So that required me to go through the process of getting the nursing home license, and that took a year and a half of process. And so I actually, along with other responsibilities, administered the nursing home for about 15 years and involved with the HUD housing, all of the housing here at the village, and pretty much all of the activities. In those days, we had a very limited staff, and so you learned to do a lot of stuff. Even on maintenance on call, in those days, you had to share, and I didn't know a lot about maintenance, but I always kept a plumber's friend in the trunk of my car in case someone called and said, I need help with a stopped up sink or something. And that was my cure-all. But yeah, we were involved in a lot of different things as the village grew. Yeah.
Rosemary, tell us about your music ministry here, because it was wonderful.
Well, I was asked by Jim to start a children's choir because we had heard them sing at several functions, and it was not pretty. And I had never really directed music. I've been involved in it, but not directed it. So Ron and Jan Thomas, our pastor at the time, although he came as the Camp Swanee director, Jan was a good accompanist, and she had a little girl just a year younger than Carrie. So we worked out that we would start it on start children's choir on Saturday mornings, and Jim required those who didn't want to sing to help him rake pine straw and do chores. So a lot of them wanted to sing. And they got to the point where they were pretty good because we made a record and went to Miami to do that. And we took them around to different churches. Then they asked if I would start a church choir. And I said, oh, no, I can't direct adults. I can do the children's, I guess, because I was in, they kept after me. And so Pomeroy was a bass. Our minister's wife was an alto, and I was a soprano, and my dad was living here at the time, and he was a tenor. So I said, if they promised to help, I would try. So that's how it grew we started doing Christmas, making that a big deal. And I can remember in those days, we were very limited in what we had to work with as far as instruments, and we had a step ladder in the back of the chapel, and somebody up on the step ladder with one of those spotlights that have the silver around them, holding it on our character. So we were very primitive. And on the last Sunday we were in the chapel, we had enough choir members on this platform that our pastor, Weldon Chambers at the time, had to sit down on the front pew. So we did grow, and we had a really great group of people. We have so much talent here, so I really can't take credit for anything except that they were willing to be involved in ministry as well.
And that continued for many years, and wonderful cantatas and musical programs as well as wonderful worship. A lot of people were involved, and we both really are committed to excellence. When we came here, that was one of Pomeroy's things. If you do it for the Lord, you should do it the best way you can. And so everything we did, we tried. He was talking about the functions. In those days, you planned the event, you set up for the event, you held the event, you cleaned up after the event, and then you met later to evaluate the event and see how you could make improvements. So there was a lot of striving to be the best that we could. But as far as choir, there was so much talent here that I was just blessed to be able to be a part of it. Yeah. Well, through the years, we've all been blessed that has happened and occurred. Tell us a little bit about your children, because you referred to Carrie. What is Carrie's position there?
Carrie was actually born in Illinois, Aurora, and came down with us. She was not a year old. And so this has been her home, except for leaving for college. She is now the vice president over health services, and she's also a licensed nursing home administrator, and just moved into assuming some new responsibilities in the area of health care. And I didn't really recommend that job for her because I happen to know that I have handled a lot of different jobs here at the village, including president, and the most stressful one is the nursing home. And I wouldn't wish that on too many people. But she did a wonderful job. In fact, I've always told her that she was a much better administrator than I was. And she would do some things that I would look to get out of. But she's done remarkably well.
And certainly during the last year, I just have so much admiration for what everybody has done at Good Samaritan as well as across
There have been so many events here at the village, but I can assure you there's been nothing like this past year. We have lived through fires and floods, and they were all stressful events, but nothing could have been the way it was this past year.
So high praises to her and her staff.
Absolutely.
And Craig and his staff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Rosemary, why don't you tell us about your other daughter?
Jennifer graduated from Florida State, and when she started a family, she was teaching at the middle school in Live Oak, and actually was Teacher of the Year in Live Oak and the whole county. And she really loves teaching. But when she had her baby, Logan, she decided that she would just be an adjunct teacher at Madison at the, in those days, called North Florida Community College. She did very well there. And then when he was older, she taught full-time. Then she was moved into something considered curriculum development. And now she is the academic dean. And it is Florida College now. And they're developing 4-year programs. They have a very fine nursing program. But she loves her work, and she apparently does a good job. So we're proud of both of them. Yeah.
And you have grandchildren?
We do. We have, Carrie has twin boys. They're 21 now.
Oh, my God.
And, of course, you know that Matthew was born with spina bifida, but they're twins. And he's affected from the waist down, but he never let that stop him, and his parents surely did not. And he's remarkable.
Yes,
And he was just accepted into Florida State's athletic training program. Right now he's working in North Carolina at the camp that he always went to when he was youngster, called Victory Junction. And so he's up there for the summer. Micah was a really good runner on the track and cross-country team in Sewanee High School. He's on the track team at Florida State. And this summer he's working at the Olive Garden.
Oh.
Kind of likes that too, I think.
There's some good perks there, probably.
Probably, yeah. They treat the college students very well as far as their scheduling around classes and so forth. So he's an engineering major, so he'll graduate I think it's a 5-year program, so he'll have 2 more years. So, but they've done well. And Jennifer's too. Logan is going into 6th grade, and Abby is going into 4th grade. And they do very well academically. They go to the Madison Academy, which is now a charter school. So they're right next door to where college is, actually, or not right next door, but down the road a piece. So.
Well, I know that people have always said it's amazing that Advent Christian Village has a youth minister. And over the years, you have all both worked in developing programs for youth as well. But Rosemary, would you share a little bit about the PALS program? Because I know you were very instrumental.
A program called the PAL program came out of pioneer clubs at Wheaton, Illinois. And I had read about it and thought, this is an ideal place to link up a resident with a youth who could be a mentor, a Christian friend, other than a peer. And so we started that, goodness, probably in the late 70s. And I would link a resident with a youth. I tried to link if a youth is kind of shy, I tried to find a resident who was a little more outgoing, and so that they were comfortable with each other. And we did a little bit of training for the resident PALs, and to this day, it's still going on. We'd have a banquet in February where the young people would perform a program for their resident PALs, and it was we tried to make it a nice banquet, and so I'm really grateful for that opportunity. That it is a good program, and I was just telling someone the other day how much more I appreciate the retirees who stepped up to be PALs now that I'm retired and realize what a commitment it is. because I tried to get them together once a month on a Sunday night after their youth fellowship for just an hour to visit, because some pals were not able to do as much with their young person. And I thought, well, they need to be able to get together at least once a month to see each other. So I would plan the function. We'd play some kind of a game and then have refreshments, generally ice cream, I think, ice cream sandwiches or something. And it's a natural environment for linking a resident with the youth.
Jim, so what is your favorite pastime for retirement?
Well, I play a lot of golf. I'm not very good at it, but I enjoy it immensely. I've met some new friends from Live Oak that I play with, and plus play with people from here at the village, staff members, former staff members, and some new retirees that I had not met. So I enjoy that quite a bit. I enjoy reading. I read in spurts. I can read for 6 months and then I don't want to read for the next 6 months. But I enjoy especially reading American history, presidential biographies, and do a lot of that. I would not call myself a student in that area, but I enjoy reading about it very much. And as I like to tell Rosemary, I like to piddle.
That's an art form.
Yes, very much so. I piddle around the yard. We live off campus, and so I have our yard is too big, but I do the mowing and trimming of some of the shrubbery until I need some help. But I always find something to do. And at our age, we spend a lot of time on the road between here and Gainesville, going to doctor appointments, either for Rosemary or myself, and people know what that's all about.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, thank you both for joining us here on the porch today, and thank you for all that you've done in this community.
Well, thank you.
And blessings to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed being with you.
Thank you. And would you all tune in again to watch another episode of Front Porch Conversations?